I'm going to show you two methods for finding the lowest common denominator. Hopefully you find one that works for you. You probably can even tell the answer to this question before we start. The lowest common denominator of 20 and 30. If I was going to do it using prime factor method, take 20, break it down. Say I used 4 and 5. Broke 4 down again. I'd have 2 and 2 and 5. For 20 and for 30, I'd probably use 3 and 10. And then for 10, I'd break that down to 2 and 5. If I was going to change these into a list from biggest to smallest, I'd change 20 into 2 squared, or 2 times 2 times 5, and I would change 30 into 2 is the smallest one, by 3 by 5. Now, to pick the lowest common denominator, what you need to do is very simple. Once you see it, you see it. Comparing your two denominators, you need to list all your factors in order from biggest to smallest. We've done that. So for 20 and 30, we need to know in our lowest common denominator that there need to be any 2s. So you look at your factors of 2s. You've got 1 2 in the factor of 30 and 2 2s in the factor of 20. You always choose the higher exponent. So you write that down. You're going to need at least 2 squared in your lowest common denominator, and that takes care of that term and that one, because 2 goes into 2 squared. So 2 to the 2 is the highest. Next prime factor is 3. Do you need any 3s? Well, yes, you do, because there's a 3 in 30. That takes care of that one. Do you need any 5s? Well, both 20 and 30 have basically 5 to the 1, or just 5. So you'll need at least a 5 to include those 5s. Multiply them all together, your final answer, 2 squared is 4, times 3 is 12, times 5 is 60. The lowest common denominator is 60. That's using the prime factorization method. The other method is to do multiples. So multiples of 20. 20, 40, 60, 80, and so on. Multiples of 30, 30, 60. Oh, bingo. There's your first denominator that's common. So your lowest common denominator, your lowest common multiple, therefore your lowest common denominator will be 60. So maybe you're thinking the multiple method looks really easy and you'd rather use the multiple method. I'm going to throw a what if at you. If you had denominators of 90, 100, and 120, and you had to find the lowest common multiple of 90, 100, and 120. You start writing out your multiples: 120, 240, 360, 90 goes into 360, but 100 doesn't, 480, and so on. It gets very laborsome. Let's try the other method. Don't shy from the other method. 90, I'm going to do 9 times 10. Break down 9 into 3 and 3. Break down 10 into 2 and 5. 100, I'll do 20 times 5. So 4 times 5 times 5. And 120, let's do 10 and 12. So 10 is 2 and 5. Sorry for the mess. Hard to write in this iPad. 12, 4 and 3. 3 goes down to a 2 and 2. So you have 2 and 5 and 2 and 2 and 3. Let's make it more organized and more neat. So 90 is 2 times 3 squared times 5, 100 is, oh, I didn't break the 4 down, 2 and 2, which is 2 squared, times 5 squared. And the 120 is 3 factors of 2, so 2 to the third times 3 times 5. Now, the key here is to take all this information and turn it into something useful. We need to find the lowest common denominator. Start with your factors of 2. Okay, the lowest common denominator is going to be the product of all of these factors, the biggest one of each. So 2 squared and 2 to the third. Pick the highest, 2 to the third. That considers all the 2's. 3's. Do we have any 3's? We have a 3 in the 120. We have a 3 squared in the 90. Got to use the biggest, so 3 squared is the same thing as a 9. Do we have any 5's? Yes, we do. We have 5 squared and 100. So the lowest common denominator is going to be the product of all these. 2 to the third is 8. 3 squared is a 9. And 5 squared is a 25. So 25 times 9 times 8, 1800, which is a really big denominator. So can you consider how much fun that would have been doing multiples back up here, 600, and so on, all the way up to 1800, before you would have found one in common between 90, 100, and 120. So the bottom method is called the prime factorization method. It's easier. The upper method is not always easier, but in this case, and definitely for three denominators, it's probably easier. The upper method is called common multiples, the least common multiple, and it's fairly simple for numbers that are closer together, and there's only 2 of them.